No nanny lasted a week with the Millionaire's twins until she showed up and said, "What if someone told you that two 8-year-old twin girls made 17 professional nannies quit in just 6 months? Would you believe it?" It sounds like an urban legend, but it's entirely true. And this isn't just a story about mischievous kids. It's a heartbreaking journey of grief, silence, and a second chance to love. Their names were Ellie and Emmy Hartman. They lived with their father in a luxurious house on the outskirts of New York, a home that once brimmed with laughter until their mother, Claire, died suddenly in a car accident. After that, everything changed. Behind the quiet walls was a storm no one could control. No nanny lasted more than a week. The sabotage grew more clever, more deliberate. No one could understand how two sweet, intelligent girls had become the nightmare of every caretaker who stepped through their door. Until one day, a young woman named Sophie Reyes walked into that house. She wasn't an expert, no degrees, no credentials. Just a 25-year-old woman with a past of her own and a calm that felt out of place in that chaotic home. But she said something that no one had ever said to Ellie and Emmy before, and that changed everything. Cameron Hartman used to be the definition of a perfect father figure, successful, composed, and deeply committed. As a renowned architect, he had built his own firm from the ground up by the age of 40. But none of his brilliant designs could fix the cracks in his own home after the sudden death of his wife. Claire, the woman he had loved since college, was gone, killed in a car crash on a rainy night 2 years ago. She had left to buy ice cream for their daughters after a tantrum-filled evening, and just like that, everything crumbled. Ellie and Emmy, 6 years old at the time, watched their world collapse without knowing how to pick up the pieces. Cameron, drowning in grief, tried to stay strong, for them. But the stronger he tried to be, the more distant he became. The silences grew longer, the conversations faded, and eventually the connection broke. That's when the girls changed. From affectionate and sweet, they became quiet, closed off, and impossible to read. When the first few nannies quit, Cameron chalked it up to adjustment issues. But when the 5th, the 10th, and finally the 17th walked out, he knew something much deeper was going on. Each woman left with the same look, exhaustion, fear, and relief. "I can't do this anymore, Mr. Hartman," the last one, Mrs. Sherrill, said as she clutched her suitcase. "They're not just mischievous, they're trying to break people." Ellie once poured sugar into a gas tank. Emmy left ghost notes in the guest room. Both would whisper to the spirit of their mom in the dark. And then there was the doll, Claire's old one, left in eerie spots around the house, as if it had replaced their mother. No matter how intelligent or composed Cameron was, he couldn't fix what was broken. Every night he'd pass by Claire's locked bedroom, never daring to open it, believing that if he didn't touch the pain, maybe it wouldn't feel so real. He tried therapy. Ellie and Emmy refused to speak or sabotaged the sessions until the professionals gave up. Slowly, Cameron began to feel like a mere witness to two little souls drifting further away from everything. Then one day, Clary, his assistant, entered his office, worry written all over her face. "Mr. Hartman, none of the agencies will send a nanny anymore. Ellie and Emmy, they've been blacklisted." Cameron sat back in his leather chair, staring blankly at the unfinished blueprints. As an architect, he was used to solving complex problems with structure and logic. But this time, logic was powerless against two hearts quietly falling apart. "So what now?" he asked softly. Clary hesitated. "There is someone, not from an official agency. She's young, but she's worked with families going through similar things. She's not like the others." "Not like how?" "Her name is Sophie Reyes. She's 25, no degree in education or psychology. But she has one thing none of the others had. She was once a hurt child too." Sophie Reyes was nothing like the candidates who had come before her. At 25, she had no official certifications, never went to college, and had never planned on becoming a nanny. But when Clary called and mentioned 2 girls lost in grief, Sophie didn't hesitate. She'd grown up in a working-class neighborhood in Chicago. Her mother died of cancer when Sophie was just 8. Her father, broken by the loss, turned to alcohol and eventually disappeared. Sophie and her 3 younger siblings were raised by their grandmother. By the time she was 15, she could cook, calm crying toddlers, and explain death to her 5-year-old sister. She didn't have a diploma, but she had 17 years of experience being the adult no one trained her to be. For the past 3 years, Sophie had worked freelance, helping families that agencies rejected, kids on the spectrum, children in deep grief, or those labeled too difficult. She had no spotless resume, but everyone who hired her said the same thing. She doesn't come to do a job. She comes to listen. When Cameron met Sophie for the first time, he was struck by her simplicity. White t-shirt, worn-out jeans, hair tied back casually. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, but her eyes, steady and deeply observant, made him feel seen. "You can tell me everything," she said calmly. "Not the edited version. I need the truth." And so Cameron did. He told her about Claire, the sudden accident, the silence that followed, about Ellie and Emmy, and how it felt to watch his daughters fade away. Sophie didn't speak much, only nodded, occasionally asking, "Have you ever told them that you're hurting too?" After over an hour, Sophie laid out 4 conditions. First, she would have full authority over Ellie and Emmy during working hours. No interference, as long as there was no physical or emotional harm. Second, she needed access to Claire's room. It had been locked since the accident. Sophie was direct. Preserved grief becomes poison. We need to face what's real before healing can start. Third, Ellie and Emmy would go to therapy, whether they wanted to or not. 8-year-olds don't get to refuse what can help them heal. And fourth, Cameron himself had to begin therapy. You're in pain, and you're parenting through it. To save them, you need to start with yourself. Cameron was silent. No one had ever spoken to him like that. No one had dared. "Do you agree, or should I walk away?" Sophie asked, eyes unwavering. After a long pause, Cameron nodded. "I agree. When can you start?" Sophie gave a soft smile. "Tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock. That night, Cameron had the hardest conversation with his daughters since Claire's death. "Girls, I need to talk to you about Sophie." "We already have a plan for her, Dad," Ellie said confidently. "She'll be gone before Friday." "No, she won't be leaving. Sophie isn't like the others. She won't run away after the first week, or the first month, or when you try to scare her off. She'll stay until you don't need her anymore." The twins fell silent for a few seconds, processing the information. "That's impossible," Emmy said. "No one's ever lasted with us." "Sophie will, and one more thing, you're both going to therapy." "No way," they both shouted. "It's not optional. Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 p.m. with Dr. Mary Ann." "We're not going." "You will. Do you know why? Because I'll be going to therapy too, every Monday and Wednesday, 6 p.m. They were stunned. They had never considered that their father might be hurting too. "Why are you going to therapy?" Ellie asked, her voice suddenly softer. "Because I miss your mom every day, and I don't know how to move on. You deserve a dad who knows how to take care of his own feelings." They said nothing. For the first time in 2 years, Cameron admitted his pain. "Did Sophie tell you to say that?" Emmy asked. "She said this: a family can only heal if they do it together." That night, there were no plans for chaos. Instead, the girls whispered about a strange new feeling of being understood by an adult, even when they didn't fully understand themselves. "Do you think she'll really stay?" Emmy asked. Everyone leaves, Ellie replied, but this time her voice didn't sound so sure. Downstairs, Cameron called Sophie. "Are you certain about this? Do you know what you're getting yourself into?" "Mr. Hartman, I once cared for twins who set their bedroom on fire, a little boy who only spoke through a puppet for 8 months, and a girl who pretended to be mute for an entire year because her mom told her she talked too much. Your daughters are intelligent and creative, but they're not unmanageable. They're just 2 8-year-old girls who lost their mother and are terrified of losing anyone else." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I was once an 8-year-old girl who lost her mother. I know what that pain can do. It can break you, or it can make you stronger." The next morning, exactly at 7 a.m., Sophie rang the doorbell of the Hartman estate. This time she was dressed casually, track pants, a comfortable t-shirt, and running shoes. "Ready for battle?" Cameron asked as he opened the door. "I didn't come to fight, Mr. Hartman," she replied calmly. "I came to bring peace." Tack. But when Ellie and Emmy came down for breakfast, their eyes were full of challenge. They had clearly launched a new operation. Operation 1 kicked off during breakfast. They swapped the sugar with salt, poured vinegar into the milk, and stretched plastic wrap over the jam jar. Sophie sat down calmly, spread butter on her toast, and avoided the jam entirely. "Don't you put sugar in your coffee?" Ellie asked. "I don't take sugar." "What about milk?" "Don't drink that either." The girls exchanged disappointed looks. Their first plan had failed, accidentally. "Do you girls drink milk?" "Of course." Emmy quickly poured a glass before Ellie could stop her. She immediately grimaced and spat it out. "Ew, it's spoiled." "That's odd." Sophie sniffed the carton. "I just opened it yesterday. Milk doesn't turn that fast, unless someone added something." She looked straight at Ellie. "Something like vinegar, perhaps?" Ellie flushed but maintained her innocent act. "I don't know anything about it." "Of course," Sophie said, rising from her seat. "Emmy, come upstairs with me. We'll brush the vinegar smell off your teeth." As they walked, Sophie shared, "When I was 8, I once poured vinegar into milk too. I meant to prank my sister, but I drank the wrong cup. Ended up with a stomachache and a scolding." "Why did you do it?" Emmy asked curiously. "I was angry. She got a doll on my birthday. I thought it was unfair. But I learned a lesson. Revenge hurts you more than the person you're trying to hurt." Emmy fell silent, thoughtful. When they came back downstairs, Ellie was ready with Operation Haunted Doll. She placed her mother's old doll in different spots around the house, on Sophie's reading chair, in the bathroom, the kitchen. Sophie simply picked it up and placed it somewhere safe, saying nothing. Frustrated, Ellie moved on to Creepy Whispers. During the lunch break, she hid behind the sofa and whispered Sophie's name in a ghostly voice. "Sophie, Sophie." "Ellie, if you want to talk, come over here," Sophie said with her eyes still closed. "I'm not Ellie." "All right, but when the ghost is done playing, send Ellie over. I need to speak with her." Ellie crawled out, confused. "How did you know it was me?" "Real ghosts don't hide behind sofas, and you sprayed perfume on your wrist this morning." "Do you believe in ghosts?" she blurted, unexpectedly emotional. "I believe in memories that haunt us. I believe that the people we love, even after they're gone, stay with us. But most of all, I believe in little girls brave enough to remember their moms." Ellie stood frozen. "We don't talk about our mom," she said quickly. "I know. Your dad told me, but not talking about her doesn't make her disappear from your heart." "I don't know. I think you two miss your mom so much that you're afraid talking about her will make it hurt more, so you pretend she never existed." "What if it does hurt more?" "Then we let it hurt, but do you know what's worse than pain?" "What?" "Hurting alone." Just then Emmy entered the room. She had heard everything. "Mom didn't like it when we fought," she whispered. "Will you tell me more about your mom?" Sophie asked gently. "She used to sing lullabies to us. She made animal-shaped pancakes every Sunday. She did voices for every story character and danced with us in the rain." The girls started to cry, but this time their tears were soft, grieving, yes, but also a release. "Your mom's not gone forever," Sophie said, holding them tight. "Every time you do something that makes her proud, she's there. Every time you're kind to each other, she's there." "But it still hurts," Ellie said. "I know. Losing someone you love is the greatest pain. But I've learned something." "What is it?" "When we share the pain, it becomes lighter. And when we share beautiful memories, they grow stronger." The girls clung to her, crying for nearly an hour. When the storm had passed, Ellie asked the question that had haunted her for 2 years. "Miss Sophie, was it our fault Mom died?" The question hit Sophie like lightning. "Why would you think that?" "Because that night we fought with Mom," Emmy admitted. "We refused to take a bath, screamed and threw tantrums. She got upset and drove out to get us ice cream to calm us down, and then the accident happened." "If we had behaved, she wouldn't have left the house," Ellie sobbed. Sophie's heart clenched. She finally understood. The girls weren't just grieving, they had been carrying guilt. "Look at me," Sophie gently lifted each of their faces. "Listen carefully. Your mom's accident was not your fault." "But if we hadn't screamed—" "There are no ifs," Sophie interrupted. "We could spend our whole lives with what-ifs. What if she left 5 minutes earlier? What if she took a different road? What if the other driver wasn't drunk? But the truth is, accidents are accidents, and none of it was your fault." "But she was angry because of us." "So what? Do you think moms only drive safely when they're happy? Your mom had hard days. She got tired, sad, and frustrated. But she still cared for you every single day. And I know this might be hard to hear, but it's the truth. She left the house that night because she loved you. Even tired, even upset, she wanted to do something that would make you happy. And that only proves how incredible she was as a mother." Sophie's words were like sunlight piercing through the heavy clouds inside their hearts. "You've carried guilt that never belonged to you for 2 years. And in doing so, you forgot how to live the life your mom dreamed for you." "What do you mean?" Emmy asked. "Your mom wanted you to be happy. But you've been pushing people away. Stop singing? Stop playing? Stop being the joyful little girl she knew. Do you think she'd be happy seeing you like this?" The girls were quiet until Ellie whispered, "Mom wanted us to be happy." "That's right. And the best way to honor her is to live fully, create beautiful memories, be kind, grow into the wonderful daughters she raised." That night, Cameron returned home and witnessed something he hadn't seen in 2 years. His daughters talking about their mom, with tears, yes, but also with smiles. "What's going on?" he asked, emotional. "We told Miss Sophie about the night Mom died," Ellie said, "about the guilt we've been carrying." Cameron's face went pale. "What guilt, sweethearts?" "We thought—" "It was our fault Mom died," Emmy whispered. "Oh my God." Cameron dropped to his knees and hugged them tightly. "Why didn't you ever tell me this?" "Because we were afraid you'd leave us too if you knew we were to blame," Emmy sobbed. He tightened his embrace. "You are not to blame, not even a little. The accident happened because of a drunk driver, not because of anything you did." "Miss Sophie said that too," Ellie added softly. "Because it's true," Cameron said, turning to Sophie with deep gratitude in his eyes. "How did you know?" he asked. "Children act out when they're punishing themselves. These girls couldn't forgive themselves, so they pushed everyone away. It was their way of self-punishment." That night, for the first time in 2 years, the girls asked their father to tell them stories about their mother. They laughed together, remembering animal-shaped pancakes, dancing in the rain, and her animated voices when reading bedtime stories. "Daddy," Emmy said as she got ready for bed, "can we visit Mommy's grave tomorrow?" "Of course, sweetheart." "And bring flowers?" Ellie asked. "All your favorite kinds." That night, for the first time, the girls hugged Sophie goodnight on their own. "Miss Sophie, you're not going to leave us, right?" Ellie asked. "I'll stay," Sophie smiled, "until you don't need me anymore. And when that day comes, we'll all know it together." The next morning, when Sophie walked into the kitchen, she heard laughter. Not forced laughter, not laughter to mask pain. Real laughter, like the sound of something broken slowly putting itself back together. 3 months later, the Hartman estate was completely transformed. No more scratches on the walls, no more broken flower pots. Instead, laughter echoed through the hallways. Ellie and Emmy were still bright and creative, but now they used those gifts in positive ways. They attended therapy regularly with Dr. Marianne, made new friends at school, and most importantly, they spoke about their mother with love, not pain. One afternoon, while baking cookies with Sophie, "Miss Sophie, can I tell you a secret?" Ellie said. "Of course, sweetheart." "At first, I wanted you to leave, really fast, because I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared I'd love you, and then you'd leave me too, like everyone else did. And now? Now I know you're not a nanny, you're family." Sophie smiled, her heart full and warm. "And you're my family too, Ellie. Family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing to love someone every single day." Emmy, decorating the cookies nearby, looked up. "Miss Sophie, do you have a boyfriend?" Sophie just looked at them and blushed with a laugh. Cameron had changed too. Thanks to therapy, he was slowly learning to accept loss, open his heart to his daughters, and speak honestly about his emotions. One evening, he asked Sophie, "Why do you do all this? You've spent your whole life taking care of other people's children." Sophie thought for a moment, then answered, "When I was 8, my mom died of cancer. My father couldn't handle it. He started drinking. My siblings and I had to live with our grandmother. And I learned something. Children don't need perfection. They just need consistent love, even if it comes from someone unexpected. It doesn't have to be a biological mother or a traditional family. It just has to be someone who chooses to stay, even when things get hard. That's why you didn't give up on the girls." "Because I saw myself in them, 2 little girls trying to understand a world that no longer made sense. They just needed someone who understood their pain." On a quiet Saturday morning, Sophie walked into the kitchen and immediately sensed something unusual. Ellie and Emmy were whispering over a table covered with colored paper, glitter pens, scissors, and an undecorated cake box. Sophie tilted her head. "What's going on?" "Nothing," they replied in unison, too quickly to be innocent. "You're not allowed in the living room until 6 p.m., Emmy announced, trying to sound official. "Orders from the Supreme Commander," Ellie added, wearing a cardboard crown. "Understood," Sophie nodded solemnly. "I shall obey." That entire day, Sophie was banned from various parts of the house. Every time she approached the living room, one of the girls popped out holding a sign, "Top Secret Zone, Authorized Personnel Only." At exactly 6 p.m., Cameron, dressed neater than usual, entered the kitchen and gently touched Sophie's shoulder. "You can come in now?" The touch was light, but she felt its warmth, like the time he handed her a cup of tea after Ellie's difficult first therapy session. He hadn't said much then, just sat nearby. But his eyes were softer than usual, like he saw not just a nanny, but someone holding his family together. The living room was decorated with handmade streamers, balloons, and a sign that read, "Happy Sophie Day." In the center of the table was a slightly lopsided, love-covered cake with Happy Sophie Day written in chocolate. Sophie froze. "What is today?" "The day you came into our lives," Emmy said. "The day our family could finally breathe again," Ellie added. "We don't know your real birthday, but this is the one we want to celebrate," Emmy concluded, her eyes shining. Cameron stepped forward and placed a small box in Sophie's hand. "Just something little," he said. She opened it, a simple silver necklace engraved with the words, "Still Here." She looked at him. He didn't say anything, but he held her gaze longer than usual, not in a way that demanded anything, just honest, grateful, and maybe, just maybe, a little in awe. "Thank you," she whispered, "for all of this." The girls began their speech, alternating sentences between laughter and quiet tears. "You stayed when everyone else left. You didn't yell when we broke things. You understood when we stayed silent. You didn't replace Mom, but you helped us remember her without hurting." Cameron watched Sophie through the whole thing, not like an employer watching an employee, but like a man watching someone who saved the most precious thing in his world. That night, as Sophie washed dishes, Cameron stood beside her with a towel, drying. "They really love you," he said softly. Sophie smiled. "They've taught me so much." A quiet pause stretched between them. "Have you ever thought of staying longer?" he asked, not looking directly, but his voice held something deeper. Sophie turned toward him. "Depends. Would I be welcome?" Cameron gave a small, sincere smile, the kind that looked like it hadn't visited his face in months. "Very welcome." One quiet Sunday afternoon, while Ellie and Emmy played chess on the porch, Sophie was tidying up the kitchen with soft jazz playing in the background. She didn't know Cameron was standing just behind the doorway, watching her through the frame. She wasn't movie star beautiful, but the way she dried the cups, folded the dish towel, tilted her head slightly to the music, it all carried a kind of peace that made something soften inside Cameron's chest. He stepped in, holding 2 glasses of iced tea. "Peace treaty signed?" he asked, nodding toward the twins. Sophie smiled. "Today's a non-combat day." They sat at the kitchen table, golden afternoon light slanting in from the windows, casting warmth across the wood. Cameron looked at Sophie a moment too long. This time, she noticed. "Is something wrong?" she asked gently. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he placed his hand on the table, palm open, no pressure, no demand. She looked down, then, without a word, placed her hand into his. His fingers closed softly around hers. "Sophie," he began, his voice rougher than usual, "I know this isn't what you came here for. This isn't the life you planned. But," she kept her eyes on him, her hand still in his, "but something about the way you walked into our lives, the way you see my girls, the way you look at me, it made me realize I've been afraid for too long, and for the first time, I don't want to hide anymore." Sophie didn't speak, but her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I love you," Cameron said, quiet, almost like he was telling himself the truth aloud for the first time. Silence lingered gently between them. Then Sophie squeezed his hand. "I don't know if I'm ready for everything love means," she whispered, "but I know I don't want to leave. Not from this house, not from you, and definitely not from those 2 girls." Cameron smiled, relieved, almost afraid to breathe too loudly in case the moment disappeared. "So, we try?" he asked. She nodded. "We try." After that day, life didn't turn into a fairy tale overnight. Ellie still argued about bath time. Emmy still tried to skip naps, but something had shifted. Cameron became more present, less distracted, less distant. He laughed more. He listened more. He started sharing stories about Claire, not with a catch in his throat, but with a soft kind of reverence. Sophie didn't stay distant. She was Cameron's partner now, but still Ellie and Emmy's constant. She didn't replace their mother, she was simply the one who stayed long enough for two grieving girls to believe that loving again didn't mean forgetting. One afternoon, while the family was working in the garden, Emmy ran over and hugged Sophie from behind. "Guess what?" she said. "What?" Sophie asked, wiping sweat from her brow. "I dreamed about Mom last night. She said she's really happy because we laugh more now." Sophie knelt and hugged her tightly. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes with silent hugs like that. 1 year after that sunlit afternoon and the first whispered confession, Cameron and Sophie held a small wedding in the backyard, the same place where Sophie and Emmy once planted spring flowers. It was simple, warm, and full of tears. Ellie was the junior bridesmaid. Emmy carried the rings. Cameron, in a soft gray suit, stood still as Sophie walked down the porch steps in a modest white dress, her hair tied loosely, eyes glistening. "I once thought I'd never love again," he whispered, taking her hand. "But you showed me love isn't replacing, it's expanding. And you made me believe that staying, even when scared, is always worth it," she replied. 9 months later, twin baby boys arrived, 2 weeks early, but loud and healthy. They named them Caleb and Asher. "Like tiny versions of Ellie and Emmy," Cameron said, beaming in the delivery room, holding Sophie and the babies in trembling arms. Ellie and Emmy weren't just excited, they were seriously committed to their new roles as junior nannies. "I can change diapers," Emmy said proudly, though I hold my breath a little. "And I can put them to sleep with classical music," Ellie added, playing Mozart softly when Caleb cried. Sophie watched the girls with tears in her eyes. She knew the miracle wasn't becoming a mother. It was watching two once-guarded hearts learn how to open for someone else. The Hartman family was now 6 strong. Dinner time was noisy, milk got spilled, toys scattered across the floor, and laughter echoed through the halls. Cameron had changed, no longer the grieving father unsure of how to move forward. He was now a gentle husband, a present dad, unafraid to crawl on the floor for a pacifier or do a 3 a.m. diaper change. And Sophie, once a girl who thought she was just a temporary helper, was now the heart of this home. One late evening, with the twins asleep and Ellie and Emmy studying in the living room, Sophie and Cameron sat on the porch, hands intertwined. "I remember the day you walked into this house," Cameron said with a smile. "Just you, your calm voice, and a heart I didn't know I'd fall for so deeply." "I remember too," Sophie replied, smiling back. "You didn't smile much then." "You made me laugh again. You made my family breathe again." "No," she said softly. "The girls did. I just knocked on the door at the right time." They both looked through the window. Caleb was asleep in Ellie's arms, while Emmy read a picture book to Asher. It was peaceful, like a painting. "Family," Sophie whispered. "Yes," Cameron said, "and this time it's the family we chose, not perfect, but full of love." Sophie leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for opening the door that day." Cameron smiled. "Thank you for never walking out." And with laughter in the house, love in the quiet moments, and 4 children calling them home, this was no longer a broken story. It was a new beginning.